When I came back after 8 days, the screams coming from inside my ranch house were louder than the cows in heat. There she was, Karen, the HOA president herself. Her perfectly ironed white blouse now looked like a crushed napkin, and her hair a complete bird's nest. She was banging on the inside of the glass door, like a wild animal, yelling things I couldn't even make out, because I was too busy laughing. She had parked her shiny BMW smack in the middle of my ranch driveway. 8 days ago, she said it was an HOA emergency, so I quietly locked the gate, shut off the power, turned off the water, and disappeared. No one knew where I went, not even my ranch hands. And now standing right in front of me was the woman who had made my life miserable for years, reduced to a sweaty, dehydrated mess, trapped in my own house like a spoiled raccoon that accidentally got caged in the chicken coop. But how did we get here? Let's rewind. My name's Cole Turner. I'm 39. I inherited my late granddad's ranch 3 years ago. After he passed in his sleep, right on the porch swing, he built himself. The ranch is about 11 acres of land in central Texas, just outside the town of Glendale. We've got cows, chickens, a rescue goat named Waffles, and more open air than any man can ask for. It was peaceful until the HOA came in. Yes, an HOA on ranch land. Some new city developers came in and started building cookie-cutter luxury cabins nearby. It was all fun and games until they decided to beautify the region by roping my ranch into their little homeowner's playground. That's how Karen Miles, president of the Crystal Bluffs HOA, entered my life. Karen is in her early 50s, short red hair, always wears lipstick so bright it could guide planes at night. She used to be a flight attendant until she got promoted to professional neighborhood tyrant. From the moment she stepped foot near my land, she treated me like her personal project. Mr. Turner, the grass here is not uniform. Mr. Turner, your rooster is crowing before 7 suro. Mr. Turner, your mailbox looks rustic. That's the point, Karen. It's a ranch anyway. It all began one cloudy Wednesday morning. I was in my barn, fixing the wheel on my ATV, when I saw Karen's white BMW creeping through my front gate. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She just drove right into the middle of my driveway, parked her car like she owned the place, and strutted out with a clipboard in hand. I stepped out of the barn, wiping my hands with a greasy rag. You lost. She didn't even flinch. This is HOA business. Mr. Turner, we're doing site evaluations, and I need a stable connection to upload data. Your ranch sits on the highest elevation in the neighborhood. I'll only be a few hours on my land. She looked around. Like I wasn't even there. HOA regulations permit reasonable temporary access for community improvement purposes. I chuckled. We aren't in the HOA. Well, technically, she said, smiling like a rattlesnake. This boundary line was included in the recent zoning map. It's pending appeal, of course. But until the process concludes, HOA presence is valid. That was the last straw. I had been too nice, too patient, too peaceful. So I simply smiled, nodded, and walked back into my house, quiet, calm, and locked the front door. Then I walked out. The back door, locked the side gate, closed the main entrance, and hit the switch to shut down the water and power systems. Karen was still inside, talking on her phone loudly, probably to one of her minions. I texted my ranch manager Trey to say I'd be gone for a bit, and to leave the livestock feed by the barn entrance. Then I tossed a bag of clothes in my truck, packed up some essentials, and vanished. No social media, no calls, no trace. Just me, a friend's mountain cabin upstate, and 8 full days of freedom. The silence was heaven. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, things weren't going quite as smooth for Karen. From what I later heard and watched on the hidden cameras, she panicked after the second day her phone battery died. Her car keys were in her purse, but she left the car window slightly open, and Waffles the goat managed to stick his head in and chew through half the interior. She tried to use the house phone, but I disconnected the landline years ago. Water cut off, electricity nah. And the worst part, the house has automatic smart locks on the inside. She thought she was safe, locking herself in. Little did she know, once locked, they need a verified code to open again. Now, to be fair, I wasn't trying to kill her or anything. I left protein bars on the kitchen counter, bottled water in the pantry, and even a blanket in case she got cold. I figured she'd leave after the first night, once she realized she wasn't welcome. But no, Karen stayed. Probably thought she'd win. And that's where the low part of the story comes in. Because while I was out enjoying nature, not everything was going according to plan. Back home, Trey called me on the third day and said, "Boss, there's a white BMW still in the driveway." Cops came sniffing around asking questions. Karen's husband filed a missing person report. Oops, I hadn't seen that coming. The ranch was still quiet, though I told Trey not to touch the gates and to just keep feeding the animals from outside the fence by day. 5. Karen's precious BMW was scratched up by tree branches. Waffles had fully moved into the passenger seat and claimed it as his new nap pod. The house had gone completely dark, and her perfect white blouse was now stained from floor dust and desperation. But then something big happened on the night of the 6th day. A wild thunderstorm rolled in. One of the trees near the barn got struck by lightning and split in half. It crashed into the side of the storage shed and knocked over a propane tank. Thankfully, it didn't explode, but the noise massive. Karen thought the world was ending. She ran screaming from the house to the back door, only to find every exit still locked. And now the local fire department was notified. Sirens were heard miles away. Emergency trucks sped toward the ranch. The camera footage showed her frantically waving her arms through the window. Face red, hair wild, probably praying that someone would rescue her from the house she trespassed into. And that's where the next chapter begins. Because I showed up at sunrise on the 8th day, with my cowboy hat on, coffee in hand, and a camera crew I had secretly hired for my new YouTube ranch channel. As I stepped onto the porch, watching Karen's face from behind the glass door, I smiled, but she didn't smile back. She lunged toward me, screaming one word, "You'll pay for this." Karen's voice cracked through the glass door like thunder following a lightning strike. "You'll pay for this." She screamed again, her face red and pressed against the glass like a child denied dessert. She pounded her fist so hard I worried the door might shatter. I didn't flinch. I sipped my coffee and calmly asked, "You done trespassing now, Karen?" The fire truck was still half a mile down the gravel road, tires kicking up clouds of dust. I could already hear the distant echo of sirens drawing closer, louder, urgent inside. Karen staggered back from the door, exhausted, filthy, and clearly humiliated. But even in that moment, after 8 days locked in my house, surviving on granola bars and bottled water, her pride was still in full display. That woman could have been on her deathbed and still tried to act like she was in charge. I slid the key into the door. Slowly, my camera guy, Diego, some young college kid who ran a ranch vlog channel, kept the camera rolling. He whispered, "This is gold, man. Absolute gold." As I opened the door, Karen stumbled out like a bat, freed from a cave, waving her hands dramatically. "You're insane. You locked me in. You endangered me. You walked in without permission." I said calmly, "You weren't invited. You parked your car on my private property. You used my electricity, my internet, my space, and never once asked if you could." "That's not the point," she barked, pointing her chipped manicure in my face. "I'm the HOA president. You have no right to treat me like this." "I'm not in your HOA," I replied. "And you don't run my ranch." The fire truck pulled up, then along with 2 cop cars and a small group of HOA board members, all standing by her precious BMW, now proudly claimed by Waffles, who refused to leave the front seat. It was chaos, Neighbors watching from behind fences. A reporter from a local station showed up because Trey had tipped them off after the lightning strike. I didn't mind. Let the world see it, ma'am. We got a report of a woman trapped in a house, said Officer Dalton, stepping out of his cruiser. He was a big guy with tired eyes. Can you explain what happened? Karen pointed to me, like I had just robbed a bank. He locked me in there like an animal. The officer turned to me. Mr. Turner, I raised an eyebrow. Officer, I never invited her into my house. She trespassed. I left supplies in there so she wouldn't go hungry or thirsty. I even made sure the cameras were rolling, so I'd have proof. Check my security footage. I didn't touch her. I just left. Karen turned to the officer, panicking. That's illegal. He kidnapped me. Dalton looked uncomfortable. Technically, ma'am. You entered private property and remained without consent. That makes you the trespasser. She gasped. Plus, he continued flipping through notes on his phone. This property is zoned outside the HOA district. It was annexed years ago under a legacy agricultural clause. You have no jurisdiction here. Karen's mouth dropped open like a broken garage door. But we have new zoning paperwork. I grinned. Pending paperwork isn't law by now. Half the neighborhood had gathered. Trey walked over and whispered, You want me to get waffles off her car? Let him enjoy it. I said he's earned it. And that's when the low part came crashing in. Because despite everything, I thought I knew. Karen had one final weapon lawsuit. She stepped away from the police, pulled her wrinkled phone from her pocket, and said, You think this is over? My lawyer will file charges for emotional distress, public humiliation, and unlawful detainment. She was trembling, her eyes wide, but her voice was strong again. You'll lose your ranch in court. I stayed calm, but inside something twisted in my gut. I had played a bold game, but had I gone too far? A lawyer, a real lawsuit. Even Officer Dalton backed up and mumbled, You might want to consult legal counsel, Mr. Turner. That afternoon, after the crowd dispersed, and Karen was driven away in an ambulance, not for injury, just for her precious dignity, I sat under the big oak tree beside my barn, thinking hard. Trey brought over 2 cold sodas and sat beside me. You okay, boss? Yeah, just wondering what's coming next. You didn't do anything wrong, didn't I? I muttered, watching a hawk circle overhead. She may have trespassed, but locking someone inside a house that might not look so good in court. You fed her. You gave her water. She had a couch and a blanket. This ain't kidnapping. It's a timeout. I chuckled. Let's hope the judge sees it that way. Later that evening, I got an email. It was from Karen's attorney, subject intent to sue, civil complaint notification. I stared at the screen for a long minute, fingers frozen over the keyboard. The letter accused me of detaining Karen against her will, causing mental trauma, damaging her property, referring to her poor, chewed-up BMW, and slandering her character by inviting media attention. I had 7 days to respond. 7 days before this turned into an actual legal battle. I closed my laptop slowly. I knew what I had to do. It was time to call my Uncle James Turner, retired federal judge, and the most feared legal mind in 3 states. But just as I reached for my phone, there was a knock on my ranch gate. Trey looked up from the chicken coop and frowned. We expecting anyone? Nope. I walked to the gate, and there, standing with sunglasses, a leather handbag, and 2 suitcases, was a woman I hadn't seen in years. My ex-wife, Melissa. She looked me dead in the eye and said, I heard you locked someone in your house. Thought you might need company. The storm I thought was over had only just begun. I stood frozen at the gate, one hand still clutching my phone, the other slack by my side of all the things I expected to show up at my ranch that day. Melissa, my ex-wife, was dead last on the list. She stood there like she'd never left, hair tied back in that same no-nonsense ponytail, wearing boots too clean for Texas dust. Her voice still sharp as ever. You going to let me in or what? I didn't move at first. My mind was still processing the hurricane of the past few days. Karen lawsuits, viral videos, HOA drama, and now this. What are you doing here, Melissa? She pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. Saw your little HOA circus on the news. You always did know how to stir the pot that doesn't answer my question. She shrugged. Maybe I came to see if you were still alive. Or maybe I'm just here because I know you'll need help fighting the devil in a skirt, who's got lawyers barking up your fence. I narrowed my eyes. You talking about Karen or yourself? She grinned, still spicy. Huh, good. You're going to need that. After a long pause, I sighed, unlocked the gate, and stepped aside. Melissa rolled her 2 suitcases past me, like she was moving in. Trey watched from the barn, eyes wide as tractor tires boss that. Who I think it is. Yep, I muttered. Still stunned. She going to stay, no idea. Melissa dropped her bags by the porch, turned around and said, You want me to help or not? I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her to turn around and walk back to wherever she came from. But truth was, Melissa was a bulldog in the courtroom. After our divorce, she'd gone back to law school and now worked in civil litigation out in Houston. If anyone could go toe-to-toe with Karen's legal sharks, it was her. All right. I said, come inside. Melissa looked around the ranch like she was inspecting it for a sale. Place looks the same. Still haven't painted that porch swing. It's not supposed to be pretty. It's supposed to be his. She nodded. Fair. We sat at the kitchen table, and I filled her in on everything. The zoning fights Karen's push to take over my land, her unannounced intrusion me, locking her in the media circus, the lawsuit, and of course, the goat chewing her car. Melissa didn't flinch, once she took notes with a pen from her purse, nodding like she was in court. You got footage? Yeah. Multiple angles. Security cams? Barn cams. Even Diego's vlog. Good. We'll need all of it. But first, she said we need to play offense. I blinked offense. You don't wait for someone like Karen to drag you to court. You strike first, file a preemptive claim for trespassing property, damage and harassment. Make her play defense. I hadn't thought of that. You sure this is smart? I asked. I just wanted to be left alone, not start a war. Melissa smirked. Cole, sweetie, you started a war the moment you locked her inside that house by nightfall. We had a full battle plan. Melissa had me gather every shred of footage, all HOA mail zoning maps, and even the text Karen had sent me 3 weeks earlier saying, I'll make sure your ranch follows our rules even if I have to get creative. Bingo Tray brought over fried chicken and cornbread, and we all ate on the porch like it was an old family reunion, minus the love part. I'll admit, it was a strange comfort having Melissa back. We'd ended on cold terms, but she had that same fire that had always made her dangerous and reliable. The next morning, Melissa filed the preemptive suit. We sent copies to the HOA board, to Karen's attorney, and most importantly to the press. It didn't take long. By noon, a local news anchor called and asked if I'd do a sit-down interview about the rising battle between private landowners and HOA overreach. Melissa grinned. Told you offense. By day 3. It was trending online. Free waffles started circulating after Diego posted a clip of Karen yelling at the goat in the car. Thousands of people from across the country began commenting, supporting the rancher who stood his ground. But then came the dip. Because on day 4, Karen returned. She didn't show up in her BMW. It was still at the repair shop. Apparently, she came in a rented black SUV with tinted windows. Her lawyer, a stiff L-looking man named Marshall Green, walked beside her. They stopped at the edge of the gate, not stepping foot inside Melissa, and I walked down to meet them. Green spoke first. Mr. Turner, Ms. Miles would like to offer a private resolution to this matter, before it escalates to court. Oh, Melissa said, crossing her arms. Is that so? Karen didn't speak. At first she just glared at me, like I'd ruined her life. Finally she said, drop your lawsuit, I'll drop mine. We both walk away. I blinked. You trespassed, and you locked me inside a house. She snapped. You think a judge won't take that seriously? Melissa stepped forward. Try us. Karen's jaw clenched. Fine. Then you'll hear from the HOA attorneys. She turned to leave, but I couldn't help myself. Oh, Karen, I called out. You forgot something. She paused. What? I held up a plastic bag inside the remains of her car's leather gear. Shift chewed to bits by waffles. Karen's face went ghost white. You'll be getting that bill too. But the moment they drove off, Melissa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then frowned. It's a legal office in Austin. She answered, Hello. This is Melissa Turner. Yes, we're aware of the pending suits. Wait, what? A counterclaim for defamation and property endangerment? You've got to be kidding me. Her eyes narrowed. No, he didn't sabotage anything. That's absurd. I watched her pace the gravel road while the call got more intense. Finally, she hung up and muttered, They're not just playing dirty, now they've brought in big guns. I raised a brow. What kind of big guns? Melissa looked me dead in the eye. They've hired a private investigator. They're trying to prove you rigged your smart lock system as a trap, so they can push criminal charges. My heart sank. This wasn't just about ranchland anymore. They were coming for my freedom. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house, every distant howl from the coyotes outside sounded like handcuffs clicking shut. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, fan watching it spin like the thoughts in my head. Criminal charges. They were really trying to pin intentional entrapment on me, turning a petty property dispute into a federal crime at 6:13 a.m. sharp. I heard Melissa's boots on the porch. She stepped in, holding 2 mugs of steaming black coffee. Didn't sleep? She asked. Not a wink. She handed me a mug. Well, you might want to take a deep breath because I went digging last night after that phone call, and we've got a problem. I sat up. What now? Melissa sat across from me and pulled her laptop from her bag. They've already submitted preliminary evidence to a judge. They're trying to argue that you purposely locked Karen in your home with intent to humiliate her and cause psychological harm. They're building a case for unlawful confinement. That's serious. I swallowed hard, but she came in on her own. I said, trying not to sound defensive. She wasn't invited. I didn't force her. I just locked up and left. That's not a crime. Melissa nodded. It's not in a normal world, but with an HOA lawyer, a local judge who plays golf with the HOA treasurer, and Karen's flair for drama, we're dealing with perception, not facts. So what do we do? She closed the laptop. We hit them harder. We find out who this private investigator is and what they're looking for. If they're snooping around your tech, we make sure your smart lock system logs are squeaky clean. Do you still have the install data? Yep, all in the cloud. Trey helped me install the new system after the old one got fried in a storm last year. Good call him. Get the logs. Just then, we heard a knock. I opened the door to find Diego. Camera slung over his shoulder and eyes wide like he'd just seen a ghost. Dude, he said breathlessly, you're trending again. What happened now? He turned his phone to show a clip playing on TikTok. It was drone footage of Karen screaming inside my house, banging on the window yelling, I'm the president of this neighborhood. The video had been edited with dramatic music. The caption read, Karen breaks into ranch, ends up getting a taste of real country justice. Karen in the cage, waffles justice. 3 million views. Melissa groaned. Oh no. Diego scratched his head. I didn't upload it. I swear someone ripped the footage from my channel. It's viral now. TMZ even shared it. I muttered just what I needed. Melissa paced. This could go either way. Public support might help, or it might make Karen look more like a victim. Depends how she spins it. Later that afternoon, I drove down to the tech repair shop, where Trey had the smart lock data archived on an external server. We pulled the logs. The timestamps showed everything: when Karen entered, when the system was armed, when I left. No hacking, no tampering, just pure automation. Still, that night, I noticed something odd. A drone buzzing in the distance just above the tree line. I stood in the middle of the pasture, eyes locked on it. Melissa came out and saw it too. "You think that's the private investigator?" she asked. "Either that, or Karen just learned how to use Amazon Prime." The drone hovered for a few seconds, then zipped off toward the east back, toward the subdivision where the HOA headquarters was located. I was starting to realize this wasn't just about land anymore. It wasn't even about Karen's pride. This was about control. Karen wanted to own everything around her, including the one piece of land she couldn't bully into submission: my ranch. But if she thought I'd roll over, she had no idea who she was dealing with. 2 mornings later, Melissa and I filed for an emergency injunction to block the HOA from including my land in any further zoning proposals. We also filed a motion to dismiss Karen's claims, attaching the security footage, the smart lock logs, and 3 witness affidavit from neighbors who'd seen Karen enter. Uninvited, the judge gave us a hearing date. It was set for Friday. But that same afternoon, something strange happened. Trey was out in the pasture when he saw tire tracks, fresh ones leading to the back of the barn. We followed them, hidden. Behind a stack of hay bales was a shattered camera drone. I picked it up. The lens was cracked, the battery was dead, but the brand was the same one Diego used. "This yours?" I asked him when he came over. Diego shook his head. "Nope. Mine's still charging in my truck." "That's not my model either. Looks like a surveillance grade 1. Melissa stepped closer. "You know what that means." "They were spying," I said quietly. "Not just spying," she added, "but doing it illegally on private property." She turned to me slowly, a fire in her eyes. This could be the bullet that turns everything around. We packed the drone in a bag and took it straight to the sheriff's office. Officer Dalton agreed to add it to the investigation. If the drone was linked to Karen or her hired investigator, it would be a violation of Texas's criminal trespass law, especially on private agricultural land. But then, the most extreme moment yet hit us like a brick wall that evening, while Melissa and I were reviewing documents on the porch. A black car pulled into the ranch driveway slowly, cautiously. We both stood up. The car stopped halfway up the gravel. The engine turned off and out stepped a tall, suited man. Gray tie, dark sunglasses, clean cut. He looked official. He walked up slowly, showed a badge, and said, "Mr. Turner, my name is Agent Huxley. I'm with the Department of Land and Property Affairs. I need to ask you some questions." Melissa frowned. "What kind of questions?" Agent Huxley looked between us and said, "There's been a formal report of zoning fraud tied to the Crystal Bluffs HOA, and your name came up on both sides." I stared at him. "Both sides?" He nodded. "Yes, someone filed documents claiming you forged land exemption papers, and if true, this could become a federal offense." Melissa stepped forward, sharp and cold. "That's a lie. He didn't forge anything." The agent didn't blink. "Then, I suggest you find out who did. Before this gets worse." Agent Huxley's words rang in my ears like a gunshot in a canyon. "Zoning fraud. Your name came up on both sides. Federal offense." I felt a cold sweat creeping down my back. Despite the Texas heat, Melissa didn't flinch. She stepped between us like a guard dog. "Agent Huxley, who exactly filed the complaint?" He adjusted his tie. "It came anonymously through our federal zoning whistleblower portal. The documents attached to the complaint included a zoning map signed with Mr. Turner's initials, dated 8 months ago, right around the time the Crystal Bluffs HOA started expanding its jurisdiction." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "We've never submitted any such map, Agent." Huxley nodded calmly. "Then, I suggest we work together to find out who did. If your client truly had nothing to do with it, you'll want this cleared up fast." He handed Melissa his card and turned to leave. "I'll be in touch. We're pulling records from both the HOA and the county registrar's office expect to follow up by the end of the week. Once he was gone, I dropped into my porch chair, head in my hands. This can't be real, I muttered now. They're trying to frame me. Melissa crouched in front of me. They're desperate. The drone backfired. The lawsuit is getting weak. Public support is shifting. So Karen's trying to change the game. Turn it into a federal investigation. But how would they even fake my signature? Melissa looked down at the manila folder in her lap. Easy. You ever throw away old zoning mail or HOA notices without shredding them? Of course, I didn't think that's how she or someone on her board got hold of something with your real signature, pasted it onto a map, submitted it as a forgery, and now it looks like you tried to zone your own ranch out from under yourself. I leaned back furious. This woman is pure evil. Melissa stood. She's worse than evil. She's strategic. But if we stay 2 steps ahead, we can flip this. Later that night, we started digging. Melissa set up shop in my kitchen with 2 laptops, piles of paper, and 3 different highlighters. Diego set up his camera and said, "This is documentary worthy now." I waved him off. "No filming. Diego, not until we clear my name." He sighed, but nodded. Trey came by with cold drinks and a huge roll of papers. "These here," he said, thumping the table, "are the original boundary maps from your grandfather's time. Got them from the town hall's archives. Found out something interesting too." He spread the map on the table. There's a 100 FT buffer zone around this ranch that was recorded in a 1982 easement agreement. It says no structure, road, or construction can touch the land. Unless the ranch owner agrees, HOA can't legally absorb it. Melissa lit up. "This could be gold." Trey grinned. "And guess what? That agreement was recorded with the county and the Federal Agriculture Registry. I even got copies stamped with the seal." He handed her a yellow document with a blue federal stamp in the corner. I nearly hugged him, but the moment of joy didn't last long, because 5 minutes later, Melissa's phone rang. She answered, and I could hear yelling through the speaker, "What do you mean an emergency injunction just got approved?" She snapped. My heart dropped. She looked at me. "The judge just signed an emergency order, freezing all property line decisions until this investigation ends." She said, "That means you can't touch your own land. No fencing, no clearing, no selling, no building, nothing." I blinked. They froze my land. Melissa nodded. "Karen's lawyers must have made a compelling enough case. We're locked down for now." I stood up, pacing. "I can't let them choke me out like this. This is my home. Melissa. My grandfather's land." She set her phone down and walked over. "I know. But if we lose control now, they'll take everything that night." I went out to the old barn, sat in my granddad's rocking chair. The one he built with his bare hands. I could still hear his voice from years ago. A man's land ain't just dirt and wood coal. It's his name, his story, his stand. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I'm not letting them erase me the next morning." Melissa had a plan if Karen's play is fraud. She said, "Then we need to prove it." And I think I know how she reached into her purse and pulled out a USB stick. I got a tip from a former HOA secretary. She said Karen's been forging documents for months. Anything that strengthens their zoning claims, if we can get inside the HOA office and copy their internal logs, we might find metadata, timestamps, edit histories, IP addresses. I raised a brow. "You want to break into their system, not break," she said with a smirk. "Just borrow a peek that night." Melissa and Diego headed to the Crystal Bluffs HOA office, under the guise of delivering a media inquiry, while Karen was distracted doing damage control over the drone incident. Melissa plugged in her USB and copied everything she could. She came back 2 hours later with a look of quiet victory. "I found it," she said, eyes wide. "A zoning PDF submitted at 2:13 me, same document they claim you filed. But guess what? What it was uploaded from a Crystal Bluffs HOA IP address, not yours. And the metadata shows it was last edited by someone named Lisa Miles. Email CBHA. My jaw dropped. Karen's niece, the HOA's communications chair. Melissa nodded. We got them. But before we could celebrate, Trey burst through the door. Boss, they're digging behind your storage shed. Flashlights. Shovels. I think they're trying to plant something. I grabbed my boots and flashlight and ran out into the night through the trees just beyond the shed. I saw shadows moving men. At least 3 of them. One with a shovel, another with a duffel bag. Melissa caught up to me panting. We need to film this. I handed my phone to Diego. The flashlight beam hit the men square in the face. They froze. I stepped forward and yelled, "You're on private property. Step away from whatever you're doing and show your hands." One of them muttered, "Abort." And they turned and ran, dropping the duffel as they bolted into the woods. I opened the bag slowly. Inside a folder of printed zoning papers and a pistol wrapped in plastic. Melissa gasped. They were going to frame you. My stomach churned, and just then we heard a crack in the trees behind us. A shadow moved again, and out stepped Karen, holding her phone up, smiling. "Oh, I have it all recorded, Cole," she said sweetly. "And trust me, this time I'll bury you." And the screen on her phone was playing a doctored version of the footage, one that showed me digging one that could ruin me for good. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at Karen as she held up her phone like it was a smoking gun. The doctored footage she was showing was grainy, but in it, clear as daylight. It looked like I was the one digging behind the shed, holding the duffel bag, burying what looked like the pistol. It was fake. It had to be, but it looked real enough to destroy me. Karen's smile grew wider. "How does it feel?" "Mr. Turner, this is what happens when you mess with the HOA. You wanted to play rough." I came prepared. Melissa stepped forward, pulling out her own phone. "That's illegal. Karen, you fabricated evidence. You stepped onto private property again." Karen cocked her head. "Who's going to believe that you, your cute little ranch crew, or the HOA board, and the judge who's been on our holiday card list for 15 years? I clenched my fists, but Melissa put a hand on my chest. "Don't." "Give her what she wants," she whispered. Karen continued circling us like a vulture. "You think public opinion matters. I've survived 3 HOA revolts. You think some internet goat memes scare me from the shadows." Trey whispered, "We're still recording." Melissa's eyes lit up. We had body cams on. Diego was filming my phone, was already recording in my shirt pocket. Everything her confession, her taunting the fact that she was the one who had trespassed, was all captured. Melissa slowly raised her phone. "Karen, thank you." Karen's face twitched. "For what for? Handing us the final nail in your own coffin." That's when Karen lunged. She swiped at Melissa's phone, grabbed at it like a wild cat. But Melissa sidestepped and held it high. Karen's shrill voice echoed in the trees. "You think this scares me? I built this community. I own it." That's when we all saw the flashing lights. Sheriff's deputies, 3 trucks rolling fast, tires crunching over gravel. Karen froze mid-rant. Out stepped Officer Dalton, again joined by 2 deputies. "Step away from them." "Ms. Miles," Dalton said firmly. "Now." Karen spun toward him, waving her hands. "They're lying. He's the one burying weapons. He locked me in his house." Dalton held up a printout. "We've got security footage from earlier tonight, showing you and your people entering his land with bags and shovels. A witness from the neighboring farm confirmed it. You've got no warrant, no permission, and now you're interfering with an active investigation." Karen's face went pale. The other officers stepped forward and gently pulled her arms behind her back. "You have the right to remain silent." Dalton began what she screeched. "You're arresting me." Melissa leaned toward her and whispered, Smile for the cameras. Diego was already zoomed in. It was over. Or so we thought. Back at the house, the tension was finally easing. Melissa backed up all the footage. The duffel bag, now in police custody, was confirmed to have Karen's assistant fingerprints on it. And the pistol unregistered, clean, likely meant to frame me. Karen was charged with trespassing, falsifying evidence, criminal mischief, and interfering with an investigation. The HOA board held an emergency meeting the next morning and voted to suspend her indefinitely. It felt like victory, but then the next wave hit. Melissa's phone buzzed. Her face shifted as she read the email. "What is it?" I asked. She slowly turned the screen. It was from Agent Huxley. Subject: New Development, Federal Fraud Investigation. Mr. Turner, in our search of HOA digital records, we have discovered a list of landowners marked for absorption as part of a quiet rezoning scheme. Your name is at the top. Several forged documents have been linked to a third-party zoning consultant hired by the Crystal Bluffs HOA under a shell company. This investigation has now expanded to include racketeering, fraudulent land acquisition, and document tampering across state lines. You may be eligible as a key witness in a federal case. My jaw dropped. Melissa whispered. She wasn't just after your land. She was trying to create a network of HOA takeovers. You weren't the first, but you might be the last. We both sat down, stunned. This wasn't just a neighborhood feud anymore. This was about power land, money control. And I'd been dropped in the center of a spiderweb that stretched far beyond Texas. The good news: we had the evidence. The bad news: it wasn't just Karen we were up against. Now it was the entire operation behind her. Shell companies, corrupt land agents, maybe even political allies. I looked over at Melissa. Her face was calm, focused. "You still in?" I asked. She smirked. "Honey, I just unpacked my suitcase." We both laughed, the first real laugh in days. Then Trey burst through the door again, panting, "You're not going to believe this." "What now?" I asked, bracing myself. He held out a piece of paper. "Just came in the mail, certified." Melissa read it, and her smile disappeared. "It's a federal summons," she said silently. "For you," I blinked me. She handed me the letter, and there, in black and white, it read, "You are hereby requested to testify in the federal case State of Texas versus Crystal Bluffs HOA as a material witness and potential victim in an organized fraud investigation." My hands shook. I'd just gone from fighting a neighborhood Karen to facing down a nationwide land scam in federal court. And the final chapter was just beginning. The federal courtroom in Austin felt colder than I expected, even with my boots on, and Melissa beside me in a sharp blazer. I felt like a kid standing on a frozen pond, hoping it wouldn't crack under me. The seal of the United States of America glared down from the judge's bench. Men and women in suits bustled around with clipboards, tablets, files so thick you could knock out a cow with them. I wasn't just fighting HOA Karen anymore. I was standing as lead witness in one of the biggest land fraud cases Texas had seen in years. Melissa leaned close and whispered, "You've got this, Cole. Just stick to the facts. Tell the truth." I nodded. My palms were sweaty, but I kept them clenched. I wasn't scared for me. I was scared they'd buried the truth under piles of fake documents and legal doublespeak. The bailiff called the session to order. Karen was there in the front row of the defendant section, wearing a navy blue suit, like she thought she could fool everyone into forgetting what she did. But her face wasn't smug anymore. It was tense. Her lips pursed, her eyes bloodshot. She looked like someone who'd seen the end coming. Next to her sat her lawyer, Marshall Green, looking like he hadn't slept in a week, and behind them, a man I recognized from the online documents, Douglas Franks, CEO of the shadowy zoning firm, tied to at least 11 illegal HOA expansions across the southern U.S. This went deep. The judge, a sharp woman in her late 60s with gray hair, pulled into a non-nonsense bun, looked immediately at me as I took the witness stand. "Mr. Turner, you understand. You are under oath." "Yes, Your Honor." And so it began. I told them everything from the moment Karen parked her BMW in the middle of my ranch and refused to leave to me, locking up and vanishing for 8 days, to discovering the doctored footage, the drone spying the bag with the planted weapon, and the forged documents filed under my name. The courtroom was silent. Even the clicking of pens stopped when Melissa passed the judge, a folder full of evidence timestamps, emails, hidden metadata from Karen's niece, the duffel bag with her assistant fingerprints, and most importantly, the HOA's internal zoning plan, titled The Absorption Blueprint. It outlined the step-by-step process of pressuring landowners, faking public votes, altering maps, and forging consent letters to quietly fold independent ranch lands into HOA jurisdiction. My ranch had just been the first test run. "You're telling this court?" The prosecutor asked that Ms. Karen Miles and her associates were orchestrating a coordinated fraud scheme across multiple counties. "Yes, sir," I said, "and I have every reason to believe they would have succeeded if I hadn't pushed back." "And what pushed you to take that stand?" I glanced toward the gallery where Trey Diego, and even Waffles on a leash, stood outside the glass window, peering in my grandfather's words. I said he told me a man's land is more than soil. It's his name, and no one gets to take that away without a fight. The judge nodded, then turned to the defense. Karen's lawyer stood face pale. No questions at this time. Karen didn't even look at me. 2 days later, the court found her guilty of criminal conspiracy fraud, illegal surveillance trespassing, and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to 2 years in a low-security facility and barred from serving on any housing board for the rest of her life. Her niece got community service and probation. Douglas Franks was indicted on multiple federal charges with pending cases. In 3 states, Crystal Bluffs HOA dissolved by court order. The land once claimed under its rule was released. Every rancher and homeowner who'd been pressured or scammed got restitution, and some even got apologies. But none of that compared to the moment I walked back into my ranch, boots crunching over gravel, and saw that new sign I had hammered into the ground. Turner Ranch, 100%. Freeland. The media still called sometimes. CNN, Fox, even Netflix pitched a documentary deal. Diego started a YouTube channel that went viral with videos titled "The Rancher Who Beat the HOA: How a Goat Chewed the Truth into the Open." 8 days in a locked house. The Karen Chronicles Waffles became a celebrity, but me, I just went back to feeding the chickens, fixing fences, and watching the sunset from that old porch swing my granddad built. Melissa didn't leave. Not right away. We sat under the oak tree one evening, cold drinks in hand. "Why'd you come back?" I asked her. She shrugged. "I came for justice. Stayed for the view." "You think we could have made it work back then?" She smiled. "Maybe we needed this war to remember who we were." I reached over, squeezed her hand. No need to say more. The land was quiet again. The chickens clucked softly. The wind rustled the grass, and for the first time in months, peace wasn't something I had to fight for. It was mine.